Hey, track and field fans, welcome back to another episode of Jamaica Track and Field Legacy Part 3. And in this episode, as I promised, I will be talking about the Jamaican women in track and field, their dominance, who the pioneers were, and when it all started. But before I get into that, I just want to make a correction. In episode 2 for the men, I was talking about Maurice Smith, and I accidentally say Maurice Green. Maurice Green is actually an American sprinter. So I was referring to Maurice Smith. Thank you very much for your forgiveness. Okay, let's move on now. In this episode, as I just said, we'll be looking at the women. The women, it is now the women's time to take their deserving spotlight in this episode. And like I did for the men, I will be exploring the pioneers, who the pioneers were, their contribution, and the dominance of our women that continues to this day. The Jamaican women, I would say, they understood the assignment and they saw what the men were doing. And of course, they decided to play their part. And of course, the Jamaican women in track and field, especially in the sprints, is a nightmare to women in sprinting. No lie, they are actually a nightmare to women in sprinting. Now, the birth of our women's dominance came in 1980, at the 1980 staging of the Olympics in Russia, where the country earned its first medal. Yes, we earned our first medal at the 1980 Olympic Games. And guess what? The Jamaican women have not looked back since. The women legacy, even though it started in 1948, just like the men, but the women were not as lucky as the men to start mining medals from 1948. So, looking at some of the pioneers in this era in the 1940s, coming into the 80s, in the 1940s, we're looking at the likes of Dr. Cynthia Thompson. I met Dr. Cynthia Thompson at the National Stadium. She is at every track meet at the stadium. And I guess what? I get to touch her spikes. Yes, she had her spikes with her. And, I sat down and we had a little chat, and she was telling me about her journey as a Jamaican athlete. So she was one of the pioneers, meaning she went to the Olympic Games in 1948 when Jamaica competed at its first Olympic game as a country. And of course, she had for company the likes of Carmen Phipps and Kathleen Russell, just to name a few of the women, because back in the 1940s, the team was very small. A matter of fact, the team to the 1948 Olympic Games, it was just 13 athletes. Yes, just 13. It was a small team. By the 1960s, coming into the 70s, Jamaica rose to a totally different level. We were now in a new era, and we were seeing athletes like Miss Vilma Charlton, Una Morris, Carmen Smith, just to name a few. And of course, guess what? The trend continued in the 1970s, and we saw the birth of numerous outstanding athletes. And of course, in this group of outstanding athletes, we're talking about the pair from St. Mary's High School that has won girls champs twice. And we're talking about Lilith Hodges and Jackie Pusey. They were now in full force with the team in the 1970s. And Jackie made her debut at the Olympic Games for Jamaica at age 16. Yes, she was just a 16 years old, and At the Jamaican junior level, we would say she would be a class two athlete. So this means that she is under 18, under 17, and she made the Olympic Games to the 1976 Olympic Games in Montreal, Canada, and of course in Canada. And of course, she and Lilith were joined by the likes of Marilyn Newville. We're talking about Rosie Allwood. We're talking about Andrea Bruce, Helen Blake, Carl Cummins, Ruth Williams, Debbie Byfield, Belinda Phillips, Evan Saunders, Audrey Reed, and a host of others. So if you are looking at the trend here, the Jamaican team started to grow from the 13 that we started out in 1948. Of course, the 80s kicks off with a bang. And when I say with a bang, I mean a bang where new athletes were now coming into the Jamaican team, meeting the pair of Lilith Hodges and Jackie Pusey again. They were now joined by the fast rising Merlene Ottey. Yes, so it was Merlene Ottey and company in the likes of Dorothy Scott, Kathy Rattray Williams, and Ruth Williams in the 1980s, joining them for the 1980 Olympic Games. So even though the women like Dr. Cynthia Thompson, Miss Vilma Charlton are some of the pioneers from the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s. It was Merlene Ottey in the 1980 Olympics that won Jamaica's first medal as Merlene Ottey Page, winning a bronze medal in the 200 meters. And let me tell you something, Jamaica has not looked back. This was the beginning of what was to come for our women. From the start of the medal rush in 1980, at the 1980 Olympics, Jamaica has medal at the Jamaican women have medal at every Olympic Games since 1980. Yes, we have. Track fans, Team Jamaica has never left the Olympic Games empty handed. No, they're always coming home with something. The 80s continue, and Jamaica and Team Jamaica got better and stronger. We had newcomers such as Sandra Farmer Patrick, Grace Jackson, who is a silver medal winner from the 1988 Olympic Games. There was Hilary Oliver, Sandy Richards, the outstanding quarter miler. Sandy Richards. We're talking about Ethelyn Tate, Marcia Tate. We're talking about Juliet Cuthbert, who is a double silver medal winner at the 1992 Olympic Games. And we're also talking about Marlene Lewis and a host of others. So what is happening is that Jamaica was just growing from strength to strength, and we were getting better with each era. Jamaica was getting better and winning more medals at the Olympic Games, which is the highest level. Of course, the 90s rushed in, and guess what? More outstanding athletes were coming to fore, and it was now becoming harder and harder to get a spot on the Jamaican team. Yes, it was becoming harder for people to make the Jamaican team. And of course, Merlin Ottey won medals in the 100 and 200 meters in every era while competing for Jamaica. Merlin Ottey won medals in the 80s, she won medals in the 90s, and she won medals in 2000, which I will call pre 21st century, where she ended that legacy after competing at 6 Olympic Games for Jamaica. Yes, 6 Olympic Games. Merlene Ottey has been to six Olympic Games. She has made every major track and field team for Jamaica since 1980. Yes, she has. She was in good company once more because she was joined by, of course, she was joined by people like Juliet Cuthbert, double silver medalist, as I said before. She was joined by gold medalist at the 1996 Olympic Games, Dion Hemmings, who is now Dion Hemmings McCarthy, the likes of Michelle Freeman, hurdlers like Michelle Freeman, Lacina Golden Clark. We're talking about Juliet Campbell, Debian Paris, Ines Turner, Deanne Guthrie, Nicole Mitchell, Gillian Russell, who is another outstanding hurdler. We're talking about Catherine Scott, Dion Rose, Delia Duhaney, Tracy Barnes, outstanding athlete from the Mannings High School. We're talking about Claudine Williams, Merlene Fraser, Andrea Lloyd, and a host of others. I could sit here and call names all night, all night. Jamaica has had some real outstanding athletes. And as I said before, and as I keep saying, we have been getting better and better with every year, every era. We are just doing great things. The century ended in 2000, and Merlene was on the podium again at the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, Australia. Yes, she was on the podium once more, and she was joined again by Juliet Campbell and Dion Hemmings. They were quickly joined by some new stars as some of the seniors at the of on the team. They were joined by new stars, like we're talking about the outstanding Tanya Lawrence that won a silver medal at the Sydney Olympic Games. We're talking about Lorraine Fenton, who won a silver in the 400 meters. The likes of Beverly, the very technical pair of Beverly McDonald and Veronica Campbell, who is now Veronica Campbell Brown, who ran an outstanding backstretch on that 4x1 relay that landed us a deserving silver medal behind the Bahamas. So at the 2000 Olympic Games, Jamaica and the Bahamas made it a Caribbean affair, winning gold and silver. Other outstanding talents in that era included the likes of Karen Butel, Delorine Ennis, London, outstanding hurdler winning bronze at the 2009 World Championship behind her friend and teammate Bridget Foster Hilton, who won gold. We're talking about Elva Goldburn. We're talking about Marjorie Hyman, Olivia McCoy, who is Jamaica's only javelin athlete, our only javelin athlete. And of course, they were in company, even though she wasn't in track and field, they had the likes of Janelle Atkinson, who is an outstanding swimmer for Jamaica. And of course, our outstanding women, these women who are the pioneers, they have set the bar at a certain level. And let me tell you something, our track and field, Jamaica's track and field, is just getting richer and richer. The track and field legacy is getting richer and richer. It is so potent. It is so potent. So here in episode 3, part 1 of the female dominance and who the pioneers are, I we look at some of the pioneers and their contribution and where their dominance start. Now, in part 2 of the women's dominance, I want you to join me because I will be sharing with you the birth of the 21st century and how Team Jamaica women shake up the sport of track and field like a tsunami. Listen, you do not want to miss part two of this, because part two, we're going to be looking at the birth of the 21st century, which started January 1st, 2001. We're going to be talking about the likes of Veronica Campbell Brown, who for me led that era. So join me next time for episode 4, part 2 of the women, when we will be looking at the 21st century and how we're shaking up things and who is shaking up things. Thank you very much for listening, and remember to follow and share. Walk good.